welcome to the post-status happiness hour, where you have two very happy people today because we've been laughing and joking before we even start, which is always a good thing. So my guest today is Jono Alderson. Jono, how are you?
Hello, I am good, thank you. It's 9 p.m. here, so I'm ready for bed, but I'll do this first. But yeah, I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. I know it's a live stream, so like you can't be like, well, we're gonna do it earlier just for you, because then it's not a live stream anymore, right? So we have to with regularity. I do some, like, I instituted the cash up, like catching up, cash up. I'm so funny. Podcast to be able to interview people who can't be in the live stream. But one of the things about the live stream too is that when people have questions, they can post them, and if they're witty and we like them, we'll put them on screen and you can answer them. So, but first, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe where you're located, what you do. Yeah, and I know you have a dog. You could talk
yes,
about
I do. I have a sausage dog. Yeah, we'll get to that. Yes, I'm Jono. I'm an independent technical SEO consultant and a web performance nerd and a WordPress evangelist. I used to work at Yoast, was head of SEO there for a bit. Some of you have probably heard of that. Lol. Before that, I've done agency stuff and I've done tool vendor stuff, and I'm a web developer at heart. I've been building websites in my bedroom since I was a teenager. I feel like that's probably still what I enjoy the most. Yeah, I'm currently an independent consultant doing that sort of stuff. And yeah, I've got a dog. She's great. That was a big lifestyle shift. We wait until after COVID. I think everyone else kind of got on board a bit earlier. Yeah, it was nice. So I quit my job and thought I'm going to walk the dog in the afternoons rather than sat watching timesheets go by. So yeah, lovely.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, where am I? That was the other thing. You said, where am I? I'm in the UK, in York, which is not New York, Old York, much better. More Vikings and Romans and Yules.
I'm in New York. You're in Old York.
Yeah. Yeah, the original, the best.
We have that in common, though, like that part of where our location is.
Nice.
And your dog's name is Willow, if I remember correctly?
Yes. And she's a kind of in-between, not quite miniature, not quite normal-sized dachshund, which makes it very frustrating to buy anything like leads and collars and outfits for her. But yeah, she's wonderful.
And she does not lack for want of photos, because I have seen lots of photos of Willow in Sam's photography for sure. So
yeah, she's a great model.
Yeah. Well, I invited you on the show today to talk about your, might I say, your first plugin in the WordPress repository.
Yeah, finally built a thing. Finally.
I know. I mean, I actually had one in there before you, although don't tell anybody. Mine's just a take on Hello Dolly, which was super simple to do. Shh. But it's called Hello Beautiful. Don't look at it right now. It hasn't been updated in 3 cycles of, I need to go figure out how to update it now that things have changed in the repository. Maybe you can help me with that later.
You're going to get the big warning banner.
I do. You'll get the big warning banner. It's not going to break your site because it literally is just Hello Dolly with different stuff in it. But yeah, so you had the not only did you build it, you had the experience of submitting it and waiting for the approval and watching that whole process, which has changed a little over the last few years too. So tell us a little bit about what the plugin is, what it does, and if you could share a little bit of the experience about what it's like to submit a plugin to WordPress for the repo.
Sure. Well, I'll start with a teaser for the second half, because I was terrified about that process, because I think of myself as a reasonably good developer and quite well embedded in the WordPress ecosystem. But having never jumped through those hoops, I was really kind of worried and a little bit ashamed that I was going to have to ask for help. I wasn't going to understand. I know there's a whole bunch of like SVN and legacy stuff that I'm not really familiar with. So this plugin's been like almost ready for about 4 years. And I'd never quite got over that hurdle of, you know what, I'm going to step up. I'm going to do the hard work. I'm going to ask for help, but it went super smoothly, really, really good. Nice. So I'll get to that. Yeah, really nice. So what is this thing? Let me preface with two foundational concerns. One is performance is super important. We all know all that, and we agree, for SEO reasons, for usability reasons, etc., etc. And storage is a thing, and storage costs become significant if you've got a large WordPress site with lots of media. When it comes to WordPress, it sucks at images on both of those categories. Images are inherently slow. Your site generates 20,000 different variations of every image that you have, most of which you probably don't even know about and won't ever use. I don't know, if you're running WooCommerce, it's generating 5 different thumbnails, filling up your server that you probably don't even need and probably won't ever need. It's generating multiple versions of those because it's trying to handle WebP and JPEG and whatever comes next at the same time, and that essentially scales infinitely, so your hosting just gets slower and slower and slower. It's the back end, and then the front end is also bad. So your theme almost certainly generates HTML markup for your images, which is suboptimal. It's spitting out a bunch of options and a bunch of sizes of those different thumbnails and sizes, and relying on your browser to pick the right one based on where is this image in the screen on the front end and what size and shape is it, and what are the dimensions of the user's viewport and the capabilities of their device, and is it high density or is it a landscape, etc. And WordPress is going to take a stab at getting that right, but it's going to get it wrong. So you're almost always serving an image that is probably the wrong size and probably the wrong shape and probably in the wrong place, probably in the wrong format. Yeah, and all of this comes with an enormous back-end cost while your server's chugging away and falling over, generating and installing all of this.
And speed, like you said, right? I mean, it affects the speed and the optimization as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, on a whole bunch of angles. So if you're serving an image that is a large image into a small slot, which if you've gone into your post editor and said, put a full-size image, and then it turns out that your template constrains that to 800 pixels because that's the width of your content area, you're serving 2 megabyte of content when you should be serving 200 KB. That's half a second of delay on load speed. It's Core Web Vitals implication. It's unhappy users. It's gobbled up bandwidth for users on networks where they get charged for per megabyte. This is all bad. Or it's the wrong shape, or it's too small and your browser is having to stretch it to fit the shape, which fires up your GPU and your graphics card, which consumes electricity, which is carbon. All of this is bad. So there's a huge amount of.
It's like trying to put on a pair of jeans that you wore in high school, but you can't fit into any longer.
Yeah. And then your cupboard has 100 different types of jeans in different cuts and styles, and none of them are right for the occasion that you want right now. It's exactly that. I love it.
You can feel free to use that in the future.
This has been a bugbear of mine for a while. Nice. We'll rewrite the whole README. So this bugs me because I'm a massive performance nerd and an SEO nerd, and this is quite the right in the wheelhouse of stuff that I think should be on. And other CMSs do not a perfect job, but a better job than we do for a bunch of reasons. Like a lot of them have hosted image transformation services and stuff, and we don't out the box. We get, when you upload an image, it generates 20 different sizes, all of which are wrong forever. Not great. So one of the things that I'm interested in and play with a lot is Cloudflare, which is a content delivery network, performance framework, security thing. If you're not familiar with it, essentially just sits in front of your website. And it does a whole bunch of speed up performance-y stuff. Some of the tooling it has is some clever stuff around images. So I spent a bunch of time playing with their image transformation service, which lets you construct a URL for your image that includes things like what width should it be and what quality should it be, and if I have to crop it, should I crop it to the left or to the right, and should I include a watermark, and 100 other things. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if instead of generating all these bad images and having the bad HTML, we just intercept what WordPress is going to spit out. We filter on anywhere that it's going to put an image on a web page, and we go, if instead of trying to use those bad images that you have and the bad HTML for them, we'll just generate something on the fly. We'll use Cloudflare or whatever other service you're using, intercept that request, generate a new image. And there's a whole bunch of interesting stuff that happens then, because we know what size the image should be, because we're in the context of it being output on the template. So even if you've said in the admin or your block editor, there should be 2,000 pixels wide, we know that it's going in a spot that's 400 pixels wide. So we can get an image that's 400 pixels wide. We can create that on the fly through Cloudflare or ImageX or Bunny. We just send a request to that server and it spits back a cropped version and it caches it, so it's all nice and performant. And now your site isn't storing any of that. So that's super nice. We can also upgrade a whole bunch of the HTML, so we can do clever stuff like source sets and improve some of the markup to say, hey, browser, we've got actually, instead of having 4 bad versions, we have 12 probably good versions. Ignore these 11, pick the best one for you, and it's going to be a perfect size based on this is a iPhone 12 using a Retina display versus my monitor that uses, I think, 2.5x DPI. which I didn't know was a thing. Like, it turns out that fractional pixel density, I am so deep into this stuff. But I guess the short version is you can't predict how a user's monitor and viewport and screen should render an image. So you've got to provide lots of different versions for lots of different scenarios. Like, can my screen support WebP? Can my browser, if I'm using a different browser, maybe I can't support AVIF as an image format. It's fairly new. So you've got to anticipate all of these requirements. All of this goes away. All of this goes away. So instead of having to generate all these variations and accommodate for all these scenarios, we just say, you know what, at the moment where we're going to request an image, instead of grabbing our own bad version, we'll just create one. And there's a bunch of other stuff happens there, so we can do that without any config at all, because we know what image size. Keep saying we. I mean me. This is the thing that I built. It's my baby.
The royal
you can also do things like the royal we. Yeah, the Jono Alderson experience. You can do other stuff like, I don't know, whatever the CDN supports. You can alter the contrast. You can change the quality level and do all that sort of stuff. So I started playing with this, I think nearly 5 years ago now, on a couple of my sites, because I was irritated about storage and constantly found myself having to grab that regenerate thumbnails plugin and go, okay, I've slightly changed my design, and now all of those cards that I had that were 800 pixels wide are now 760, and now all my images are wrong, so I've got to regenerate it all. And I got so annoyed. I'm like, what if we just solve this? But it turns out there's all sorts of other bits, like you have image references in your XML sitemaps and in your meta tags and in your schema and in your favicon and in your RSS feeds and in your JSON. And it turns out that WordPress is shoving these bad image options out everywhere. So this thing got bigger and bigger and more complicated. And then you've got the block editor and classic editor, and all these things handle image markup in different ways. If you've ever looked at the code view of an image block in Gutenberg, I'm so sorry, because like it's I don't know why I'm apologizing, but I'm sorry for the experience you had looking at. Like,
I feel sorry for you. Yes.
Yeah, it's so frustratingly messy. So things like the image ID is in a JSON attribute, but then whether or not the image is linked is still hard coded, and the alt attribute's hard coded, and the size is different. None of it is sensible. None of it is consistent with the classic yada 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 yada. So yeah, so essentially what the plugin does is just gets rid of all that. Well, not gets rid of it, but steps in, intercepts, and just goes, okay, this is a thumbnail in a sidebar that should be 300 by 300 pixels. Here is a 300 by 300 pixel image, and here is the HTML markup that also gives you a 450 by 450, a 600 by 600, a 900 by 900, whatever, to account for retina displays, triple screen displays, smaller merbars, etc. And then your browser just picks the right one, and everybody's happy, and everything is good. Everybody wins. Hopefully.
Everybody wins. And it sounds like magic, because I'm not a developer and I don't understand how those things work. So yeah, so it's like, it's beautiful. I have I had an experience back in my freelance days. I was coordinating the local meetup, and so people thought, of course, she must be an expert at WordPress and know everything there is to know since she's coordinating a meetup. And a young girl wanted to come meet with me. A young woman wanted to come meet with me to see if I could help her figure out what was wrong with her website, because the homepage would not load. So I had her come over, and I'm going to probably misquote the size of the home image, that she had on the homepage, the hero image on the homepage.
Oh, no.
But after 45 seconds, it still had not loaded, because it was like 40,000 pixels wide kind of thing. Because she thought the bigger it was, the better it would render.
Better quality. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's interesting, because common wisdom would say, put a smaller image on there and don't just upload anything straight from your phone. But increasingly, one of the things that happens with retina displays of my weird 2.5x DPI screen is actually you want a bigger image. Otherwise, it's going to look blurry and low quality, because your browser is going to stretch it down. And what a pixel isn't a pixel anymore. You've like what constitutes a pixel is determined by a combination of yada 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 yada, the markup, the browser, its support, the physical attributes of the screen. So you really need to supply the right sized image for the place and dimensions it's going to be in, and that's not always going to be the smallest possible. So it's not even as simple as oh yeah, this just compresses stuff and shrinks it. It's got to serve the right thing at the right time. And thankfully, I think was it WordPress 6 point something introduced a filter so that it now shrinks images to, I think, a max of 2,400 pixels, which at least means you can't do the like, here is a straight from my iPhone 50,000
Right.
gigabyte image anymore, which is a huge improvement.
Yeah, I
It's a
mean, I'd
mess.
heard of slow, but I had never seen anything quite that excruciatingly slow.
Watching
It was
choke down.
it was probably 10 years ago, but still, it was like, are you kidding me? Yeah, ridiculous.
Ouch. Well, there's another interesting side effect there, which is that a lot of the modern image formats, the AVIFs, etc., don't render progressively in the way that JPEG did. So at least in those days, you would have got it going chunk, 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 chunk like an inkjet printer. But now you just get nothing. And you're just sat there waiting whilst the browser locks. It's horrible. Real nasty.
And I don't know if this was WordPress. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Again, not a developer, so don't come at me in the comments. But was it WordPress or themes or a combination of both? And does it still do this, where you upload an image and it creates like 5 copies of that image as a thumbnail, as a square? And is it still doing that? And
5 if you're lucky. Yeah. And 5, so a small and a thumbnail, a medium, a large, and the original. And then chances are, whatever combination of plugins you're using, WooCommerce adds another 5, Gravity Forms adds another 3. Yeah. Chances are every image you upload, it's going to resize and it's going to generate a dozen. And that storage is cheap, but at scale, that's still going to fill up your server. It's going to make the media library slow and clunky. And this stuff isn't good. It's a really old school way of dealing with it. And then again, like if you change anything about your theme, you've also got to then resize and regenerate all those image variants because what does small or medium or large mean has changed. Yeah, absolutely nightmare.
And if you look at your media if you look at your media library, you're not going to see that, right? It's still going to show you the image you uploaded.
Yeah, no, it's all buried.
So,
yeah.
Right. So you can look at your media library and say, what is she talking about? There aren't 5 images. There's only 1. Well, you're not seeing every iteration of that same image for sure.
You will you will see an email from your hosting company saying your storage has hit 90% and everything is going to shut down unless you increase your billing. That's what you'll see.
Right, exactly. But also, I mean, it really does impact the carbon footprint as well. The more things we're storing on our website, incrementally it hits our carbon footprint. And we used to think that because it was on computers, right? Computers, the internet, it's different than like cutting down trees.
It's infinite.
Right. It's not junk mail that I'm recycling and no, but it's still using fossil fuels or whatever fuels. It's still eating those kinds of resources that we have, and there's a carbon footprint that goes along with running these things. And so the more we can do to reduce the use, the better that it is, for sure.
Yeah, and the more you think about the internet is just other people's computers, the more you realize that physical cost there's the generation of those images, the storage of them, but then also the transmission of them through undersea cables to end users, their laptops and by power stations, their graphics cards spin up to handle the recycle. Like there are like 8 different people paying the cost of this along that chain. It's really bad.
Right. Yeah, it really is. So even your cheap hosting is still costing lots of people resources. Should we bring the product up and let you do a little demo with it?
Yeah, I could do that. Why not? Yeah, and we need to go back at some point and talk about the release process.
Yes.
So yeah,
right.
brief plug.
Thank you for the reminder.
This is a that's right. This is a hobby project of mine. It's where I cut my teeth on WordPress and continue to as I continually rebuild it and learn. This is Days of the Year. Today is National Hug Day. That's quite cool. And this is quite an image-rich site. It's meant to be emotive, etc. But that's not the point. Point is, this has 10,000 posts or so, each of which has a range of media and images and a whole bunch of other stuff outside of that. And the cost of storing that and generating it is not insignificant. And I have, I think, 5 or so different versions of every image size. So there's this hero version, there's this card version. If I go into a page, there's a slightly different size card version, or this is just the desktop view. So there's like 2 or 3 mobile iterations of that as well. There's this date listing, which gives, when it loads, another size. There's the OG image for Facebook, which is another size still. All of this adds up. So the conceptual and very literal cost of generating and managing all of those image sizes becomes not insignificant. So this is where I started playing with this idea that what if I can just generate these images on the fly? So if I do this briefly, I will minimize the amount of code that I'm just whacking up on my screen. Really with my mouse, there we go. If I just do this quickly and go to here, let's just get rid of that for a second. here is the original image. And this is huge. This is 2,000 pixels by 1,300 pixels, which is more than that. And it's 40. Oh, it's using 41 meg. Never mind. But this is far bigger than I need for this little thumbnail in this spot, right? So what if instead of having this, instead of generating all the variants, we just change the URL and we use Cloudflare's rewrite system to say, give me a pixel ratio of 1, set the format as auto. So detect whether my browser does or doesn't support WebP or AVIF. And then before you even try and just convert it, check whether the WebP is going to be smaller than the original PNG, and don't bother if it's not. So there's a whole bunch of brain in there, which is nice. Bunch of other stuff like the height should be 450 and the width should be whatever the width should be, 1096. Whereas if I'd done this in WordPress, I would have had to have generated this in advance. This is just created on the fly, set the quality, and then reference the original. Now I could also go, actually, this is a bit pixelated. I want to set it to 95, or I want to change the gravity or the crop, all sorts of stuff. And there's a bunch of clever stuff you can do with this. You can say, actually, if I wanted to crop this to make it 600, say, oops, 6,096 might be a bit excessive. If I want to make this 600 wide, it's going to try and do it in a way that crops it intelligently, etc. And you can change a bunch of the rules and logic around that. This is covering at the moment. I can do contain instead. Now, this is lovely, but this is just one of Cloudflare's things out the box. The magic has been, how do I work this back so that WordPress does this and uses this instead of its native image system, which was a month of my life I won't get back. So we get, instead of WordPress's native image output, we get this, which is super hard to read on there unless I try and zoom it in a little. Now it's zoomed in far too much. There we go. So this looks pretty dense, but there's a few really nice things going on here. So again, instead of having WordPress generate all these versions in advance, we've got a source set attribute that just lists, because I know this image should always be 1,096 pixels wide, we've generated one that's double that, and I think one that's half that for the original. And then the browser can just pick the best one based on the size of the image, the orientation, sorry, the size of the browser's viewport, and a bunch of other stuff, like we wrap it in a picture element, which is some nice future proofing, and we use WordPress's intrinsic sizing attributes, so we're not having to guess. Yeah, all we're essentially doing is just rewriting the heck out of this and accounting for all the weird edge cases where WordPress is convinced that it knows best about which bad image you want, and just using this Cloudflare system. And this works for images in content, for images in templates, anywhere where you're doing block edited stuff, etc. Yeah, really nice. And then stuff like the, I think, OG image as well automatically uses this. This is really nice because most people's open graph images, so this is the share image you get when you paste a link into Slack or WhatsApp or Facebook, etc. Everybody does this really badly, because if you Google what should the right size be, some social media guide from 2014 will say 1,200 pixels by 625. That's wrong. It should be a minimum of 1,200 by 675 if you want to be eligible for Google Discover and be the right size for Facebook's new stuff. And of course, nobody has that because all of their old pre-generated WordPress images were the wrong size. So we generate this on the fly and we upscale it if it needs to. So we can go, this is now 1,200 by 675. And Facebook, etc., has a perfectly optimized version for their usage as well. Nice. Where this gets really nice, let me give you a different example. This is a freelance client of mine, and they're a database of what pro gamers settings use. So if you're a CS2 player or a Fortnite player, there's a whole market in people understanding what type of monitor do you have and what's the refresh rate set to, etc. One of the problems they have is they get their images secondhand and they're really small. So this is their featured image and it's pretty tiny. So we make it bigger. So actually, when you look at the original image, this is the original. It's on a white background. It's not great quality, etc. But we can scale it up. So we can do sharpen this and expand it. And then in their OG image tag, we can expand it to fill that whole space so it's eligible for all the Google Discover stuff, etc. And it's a higher quality. So it's actually better than it was, which again is just Cloudflare's magic stuff. So they have like a sharpen setting somewhere. Yeah, really, really nice. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of use cases and scenarios for this, but essentially all of this is magic. Nobody should need to care about any of this. It just stops WordPress being your image engine and outsources all of that to Cloudflare, Imagix, or Bunny, or one of the others. And yeah, it's also all for you. Real nice.
And it's quick. It's not like, hold on, we got to figure out what this looks like and how to render it for you. It's like, boom, you don't even know what's happening.
Yeah, so this should be faster. Yeah, it should be faster than your WordPress stuff doing it, because Cloudflare is super good. Worst case scenario, the very first time a variant is generated, it might take half a second or so, but typically it's going to be as fast as you can, and then they're all cached. So these images then essentially exist, but on Cloudflare's server rather than yours, so you're not having to worry about it. And then if you're running any kind of caching plugins or anything, that will all sync up neatly, and it'll all join up, and it'll refresh them when it needs to. Yeah, really cool.
That is very cool. Now, before we get back to the experience of submitting this to the repo, can we talk about this website for a quick second? Because I was using this website for years.
Yes, certainly.
For social media before I realized it was yours.
Oh, fantastic. I hear that story a lot at conferences and things. Yeah, it became that's my internet being slow, not the Edge Images plugin being slow, thankfully. Yeah, I get that a lot of conferences. Like this started because I had that same itch. Like 2009 or so, I was like, I need some content campaign ideas for small businesses and clients, etc. I wonder what's out there. And you go, okay, it's Talk Like a Pirate Day, it's Darwin Day. Suddenly it's World Radio Day, and ideas. Like, so I'm like, what if I build something? This is the kind of my big WordPress moment, definitely. This has been rebuilt from scratch so many times now. It's the most butchered, bespoke, not WordPress way website that I've ever touched. I love it. It's great.
I was, I eventually, after years of like figuring out, because when I was working at Give specifically, I would look to see like, are any of the days specific to nonprofits, right? So like Whale Day, International Whale Day, Day of the Dolphins, things like that. And so I would come here and I would look to see there you go, National Organ Donor Day, for example. And one day I was like, geez, I wonder if this is on WordPress. So, I did the whole like check it for WordPress thing.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I wonder who's behind this. And I went to the About a page or wherever it was. And I was like, oh my God, I know those people.
That's cool. Now, see some fun stuff. Behind the scenes, I've built a whole admin process. So WordPress is really bad at date-based stuff, it turns out. Like the whole site is essentially a calendar, but almost all of which is in the future. And WordPress really, and a whole bunch in the past. The amount of work to overwrite WordPress's assumption that everything is a date-based archive on when stuff is published. Super interesting. Yeah, we built a whole kind of editorial flows around how do we grade and manage these dates in a way that then WordPress understands, which is super interesting learning curve. We've got all these URLs are essentially just rewrites of WordPress's data archive system, but then we have to override the query to say actually go and fetch stuff. Yeah, really, really cool.
That's very cool. I love it. So I've been using the site for years. I don't know when you published it, but I can tell you that it's been around longer than 5 or 6 years because I've been using it for quite a while.
I think 2009 was maybe the first instance of that, I reckon.
Well, that would be long before I was even using WordPress. So yes, absolutely. Very, very nicely done. So I also want to ask you about, we know that not only for SEO, but for altruistic reasons, we should have alt text on our images. Does your plugin do anything with alt text? Does it look for it? Nothing. Okay.
No, I leave whatever WordPress is already doing for 2 reasons. One is I don't want to conflict with all the other things out there that do it, but the other is a lingering. I don't think we should be auto-generating or attempting to infer alt attributes. I think
I agree.
I think part of the role of the alt attribute has to consider the context of the image and what it's for, not just what's in it. Like the difference between this is a man wearing a black cardigan and this is a person appearing on a podcast is quite significant. Podcast or webinar. It's quite significant and important for the kinds of people who are using and relying on alt attributes. And I'm not convinced that there are currently good AI whatever solutions that can understand that context well enough to generate an alt attribute that's going to be better than no alt attribute, which at least says this is decorative. So yeah, I'll pick up what WordPress does, but I don't want to get into that territory because I think a lot of people are getting it wrong because they're trying to shortcut it. And if they're going to do the hard work themselves, then great, I'll just pick that up with the plugin.
Makes sense. I've said often that I wish that if you uploaded an image, it would prompt you to add the alt text.
Yes.
With
Yeah,
a box
sure.
that says, where you have to check a box that says either this is decorative or I don't care about accessibility. I don't want people to be able to know what it is and bypass that. But I'm a little biased because I do a lot
completely
with accessibility.
agree. We looked into scoping that when I was at Yoast. I don't know if they're still looking at it now, but we got quite far into the idea of part of that workflow having this is a purely decorative checkbox. But the way WordPress handles images and their alt attributes is so bad that because like the alt attribute you set on the image when it's in the media library is not the same as the context when it's in the page. So you've got one image with different alt text depending on where it all gets very muddy. So here be dragons.
Yeah, for sure. If you put it in the media library, anything like afterwards, well, yeah, but if you upload it first and put the description on the post or the page, that doesn't carry to the media library, and then it doesn't carry forward to anything else either. So yeah, it gets a little confusing for sure. Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit. I submitted a plugin a million years ago. I don't know how long ago. It was the year 2020 because it was during lockdown actually. And it was not as long a process as have been in more recent years, but now they're streamlining things and doing things a little bit differently. So what was your experience in, I know you said you were like, oh, like, how do I do this? But what was your experience in submitting the plugin to the repository? Did you get any feedback on having to make any changes before you went forward? And how did that whole thing, how did the whole process work for you?
Sure. So yeah, again, I was super nervous going into this. I have been a hobbyist developer for 100 years, and I'm self-taught. I think I'm quite good, but I know that there are things I don't know. So it's really hard for me. I was really nervous about getting critiqued and feedback on stuff that maybe should have been obvious and I maybe should have known. So I held off for ages. I finally plucked up the courage around Christmas, rebuilt this thing from scratch properly, quote unquote. And then when it was 99% done, then went and looked at the plugin guidelines and thought, okay, what do I need to do to get this last hurdle? And the page was super intimidating. It's like a wall of text of thou shalt not.
Yes.
And it's really, and I went through it and I'm like, okay, I am pretty certain I'm okay on all of this. Actually, the more I looked at it, the more I thought, actually, a lot of this does sound quite basic. It's like escape your inputs and validate. It's okay, I'm doing that. And like, don't do stupid stuff and make it, okay, don't obfuscate, you're fine. Actually, the more I looked at it, the more it felt like I'd already, my fear of being called out and stuff had meant that I'd already triple checked everything and really thought it through. So I managed to juggle my way through the form and uploaded a zip of the plugin. And there's big red lights everywhere that say, do not email us. You will hear from us when you hear from us. Good luck. Maybe I hope you don't die first.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
yeah, very much. Like, we have a backlog, go away. And I thought, okay, I've done the thing. And then I think about 48 hours later, I got an email saying, we've reviewed your plugin, and we found two sections, again, wall of kind of slightly intimidating text, but peeling through the boilerplate stuff, they'd found, I don't even know who it was we reviewed. I should double check and find out and thank them. Two bit, I suspect that was an automated process at that stage, found 2 bits where I'd not sanitized a variable that I didn't think needed sanitizing because I was just reading something from the URL, but whatever. So I added a whole load more hardening, resaved it, rezipped it, sent it, and then about 48 hours from then, got an email saying, yeah, congrats, you're in, you got a plugin.
Nice.
Which really surprised me. I was expecting to have to go through several rounds of, you have not sanitized these things properly, you idiot. How dare you be a hobbyist trying to come and do this properly?
Who do you think you are?
Really, yeah, exactly. That's going to be on my t-shirt at WordCamp EU. I was really happy with that. And then I had to get my head around how SVN works, which I think I'd last touched SVN in maybe 2012 when I was in agency world. And I'm a Windows user, and all of the guides assume that you're a Mac user. So it's like, oh yeah, go over there, good luck, see you later. So I had to go try about 3 bits of software and paste several of my passwords and subsequent auth codes, and then my auth password codes, and then my 2FA password auths in various combinations into various places, and panicked because there's a point where there's a whole bunch of stuff around structuring the plugin code. So you've got to have a trunk version and then tagged versions, except you don't need tag versions, but you should probably have tag versions. But it's fine because that can be the same as like at this point, fine. I just copy paste some stuff and hope.
Yeah.
And then you hit the go button on SVN, and there's a little progress bar where it's like, yep, uploading to WordPress.org. Okay, if I've got this wrong, this is going to look real bad. And of course, there's a whole bunch of nuance around how should your README file plugin be formatted, and if you use the wrong number of equals is, or put the wrong number of stars in the header in there, like the whole thing just implodes. So that was so I have no idea if this thing is going to look like garbage when it hits the I don't know how easy it is to update it when I make changes to it, or whether there's any kind of delay on that, or what the implications are. So that was nerve-wracking. But it all worked all right. It turned up in the repository. I immediately found a bunch of bugs that I'd missed before I launched it, so I had to go and do like a version 1.1. Frantically, I've released a thing that's broken. That's going to look bad. But that was straightforward as well. So I just followed the same guidelines, like make a different folder for that version, update all the code, find all the places you've referenced the latest version and what's supported, and then just re-SVN it. And since then I think I've made about like another 10 or 12 updates, which gets easier and fairly straightforward every time. I keep missing things. There's like 3 different files you need to update, and each of them in about 3 different places, and I keep missing one, and then it's like, where's the update? Why can't I update? Why does it say it's the wrong version? Oh, I've done it again. So apologies to like the 4 people who are actually using this plugin, because they've had mega update fatigue by now. But yeah, overall intimidating, but once I got over that hurdle and found some confidence in it, absolutely straightforward and really fine, as long as you don't accidentally click the wrong button and forget a bunch of stuff. Yeah, pretty surprising. I was expecting it to be far more harrowing. Yeah, good.
I wish that when I did it, I had written down the steps or screen recorded what I did, because now I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't remember. I'm going to have to go through all the steps to update it again. And but it'll get there. It'll get there. One of the things I will say is I don't know the threshold. I think it's a very high number, but it'll show 10 plus active installs until you have like 5,000 active installs or something.
Great. Real helpful.
So it's like, so don't get all what's the word I want to say? Worried that like, why only 10 people are using this?
Yeah, because I mean 10 plus is technically accurate, right? It's like 10 to 4,999.
Right? Yeah. Because mine says 10 plus active installs, but it also has had over 2,000 downloads. So somewhere between 10 plus and 2,000.
Okay, reassuring.
And it even shows like anywhere from 2 to 8 every day for the last, like, since September, since last June. And I'm like, okay, that's got to be more than 10 plus, but you're right. I mean, 5 million is 10 plus, right? So
yeah, exactly. Well, I will go download that. That sounds like a nice plugin to have. Nice. You didn't illicitly fork Hello Dolly, did you, and steal its namespace? Was that what you did?
No, I actually forked Hello Dolly, like you're supposed to. Nice. Matt created that so you could learn coding. Yeah, and then I replaced it with, it's called Hello Beautiful. And when you log into your website, it tells you wonderful things about yourself.
Oh, I like that. That's nice.
You deserve an extra cup of coffee today. You look lovely. You should have a cookie. Yeah, you should, right? And it doesn't take up much space, obviously, because it's like 40 lines of code or less. And then I went one step further and I added CSS to change the color of how it appears in your browser, so that when I do have to update it, I don't have to think of new things to say. I can just go, it should be pink now. It should be red now. Oh, look, it's a change. Excellent. I can update it in the repo. And I did it so that I could learn a little bit. I wanted to understand just the tiniest little bit of what development is. I submitted it to the repo and I got an email immediately saying, lots of people try to make Hello Dolly and submit it to the repo. Will you promise to keep updating it so it doesn't just sit and linger? And I said, yes, I will. And I have up until the last 3, because I lost access to my GitHub account and I need to figure out how to get it back.
Oh, nightmare. That's not fun.
Yeah, no. So I'm working on that right now. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. But here's the thing. So I wrote it on my lunch hour. I actually have a piece of paper where I wrote down what to do.
Yes.
I wrote on my lunch hour. I did a local install. I hit go and it worked on the first try. So of course, I went to Twitter. I said, I just wrote a plugin. It worked on the first try. Development, like it's hard. Of course, just like tongue in cheek, right?
0 bugs. Yep. Excellent.
Tongue in cheek, of course, but it was a lot of fun. I even did a talk at WordCamp Taipei. I can't remember exactly. During lockdown, during all of that, online at 2:00 in the morning, my time, about why I did it and how I did it and what I learned from the process. So it was kind of fun.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, that's
cool.
Fun? Yeah, nice.
So
nothing like. Sorry, go.
I said nothing like get up in the middle of the night to pajama bottoms, business on top, present live.
Yeah. Done a few 3 a.m. webinars. It's an interesting vibe. A lot of coffee.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I coded a bunch of mine using Cursor, which was an interesting experience, like an AI assistant thing. So I had a beta version of the plugin for years, which was okay, but definitely not suitable for release. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to tear it down. I'm going to rebuild it line for line. I thought this is an interesting opportunity to do like pair coding with an AI system. Really interesting. I like the finished product is far more sophisticated than it would have been had I just soloed it. And it took, I reckon, 20% of the time it would have taken for me to have done it by hand. And there were, I don't think it's radically different functionally, but there were a few moments where I was halfway into building part of it, and it made a suggestion that made me think, oh, actually, maybe we should do it that way instead of this way. And it's better as a result. So that was a really fascinating experience. Highly recommend that for anyone who's wanting to build anything or rebuild anything. Go get Cursor and or something else. And tell it, you think externally, and you write product specs and define problems and let it do some of the thinking. Really interesting.
So one of the hardest parts for me was determining what the artwork would look like on the repo page, right? So
I'm sorted mine, thankfully.
I saw yours. I love it. It's very edgy or whatever. It goes along with the word edge, right?
Yep.
Mine. I was like, what's beautiful that I could put in Hella Beautiful? I took some pictures of the mountains up in the Adirondacks. I'll just use that. So that's what mine is.
Nice.
For sure.
Yeah, I asked my in-house creative. I said something with like image icons and magic, and Sam came back an hour later with, great, sorted, thank you.
Love it. Moving right along. Yeah, no, it looks great. So we don't have any questions in the comments. Now's your opportunity. If you do have some questions, throw them in there, because we're going to wrap up here in a minute or two. Just a note for anybody who's paying attention, we will not have the happiness hour for the next 2 weeks. I will be in WordCamp Asia next week, and I will be recovering from WordCamp Asia the week after. I'm going to give myself a little bit of a break so I don't burn out too fast. Notice I don't say so I won't burn out, because we know that's going to happen. But so it happens slow. It should be a slow burn. Question. Yeah, it should be a slow burn, not just a boom. Everything's not like that flash paper magicians use. It's just over before you can even see it. My favorite though is when you're at a hibachi restaurant and they light the whole volcano thing on fire in front of you.
Oh, yeah.
It smells so good, but that also can be my life sometimes. Just like, there it goes. But anyway,
I did a conference in Italy a few years ago, and they brought out an entire wheel of Parmesan cheese at this restaurant, and they set the top on fire. Like by the table, there is a flame. Like it's huge. It's like half a meter wide, and they've poured a bunch of alcohol onto it, and they've set it on fire, and then they're scraping. People are serving it. Oh, that's indescribly fun. Right.
That's how, like, if there's a heaven, that's how I want to be greeted. Here's your here's your flaming
wheel
wheel of cheese.
Come on in. One each. Great.
And here's and you can choose any of these 3 wines that pair well with it, Michelle.
Yes, perfect.
And for dessert, tiramisu.
Yeah, nice.
Oh, any last words? Anything that you'd want to tell people before we let you go here?
I should do a plug. If you want your website to be bigger, better, faster, stronger, if you want to dial up your technical SEO or web performance or structured data or do some cool Cloudflare stuff, and fix all the things, I do consulting type stuff over at jonoalderson.com. Give me a shout. Happy to chat. WordPress, something WordPress. Yeah, that.
We'll
That
put
was
all of that
cohesive.
information, all that information will be in the show notes when this goes live on our website. Thank you to Olivia, who does all of that back, behind the
You're a
scenes
hero.
work for me. She is amazing. So we'll have all of that. If you want to contact Jono directly, we'll put his website in the show notes as well. So thank you, Jono, for being. I know you're past your bedtime probably, but thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank
Look
you for
forward to
having me. It
seeing
was
you.
an absolute
Yeah.
delight.
Look forward to
Enjoy
seeing you
Asia.
in Switzerland. I will. Thank you. I'll send you pictures, you and Sam. And thanks so much for being here. Thanks everybody else. We'll see you in a couple of weeks when we're back.
See you on the other side. Bye.
That's right.